Next News Breaking News.
Breaking tonight, President Trump just threw a spotlight on one of Washington's most untouchable institutions. And the Fed establishment is freaking out. Trump's Fed chair nominee, Kevin Warsh, is being grilled, mocked, and baited by Democrats desperate to keep control over America's economic machinery. But instead of folding, he fired right back. While Trump raised a brutal question every taxpayer should be asking: how does a project that should cost $25 million explode to nearly $4 billion? This is not an ordinary confirmation fight. This is a direct battle over who controls your money, your mortgage, your retirement, and your future. Now, let's be clear why this matters to you. See, the Federal Reserve is not some abstract club for economists in expensive suits. Its decisions hit your kitchen table every single day. Interest rates decide whether families can buy a home, whether small businesses can expand, whether credit card debt crushes working Americans, and whether retirees can hold on to what they built. For years, Americans watched unelected central bankers drift into pet causes and elite groupthink while regular people got slammed by inflation and economic chaos. President Trump is saying enough. And by choosing Kevin Warsh, he's signaling that the Fed must get back to its core job, protecting the dollar, supporting real growth, and serving the American people instead of the Davos crowd. And when Trump asks why the Fed can torch billions on a renovation while Americans are told to tighten their belts, he's exposing the arrogance at the heart of the system. This nomination, it's not just personnel. It's a showdown over accountability, competence, and whether America First economics finally reaches the central bank. Personally, we should just end the Fed altogether. But while we're talking about the elites gaming the system, here's the part that too many Americans learn the hard way. See, Noble Gold Investments understands something that Wall Street hopes you never figure out. Wall Street doesn't lose money on sell-offs. You do. They create the panic, wait for you to dump your position out of fear, and scoop it up at a discount. The big banks aren't selling their gold, they're buying yours. Every time the headlines scream, regular people sell. Every time regular people sell, the institutions are right there waiting with open hands. You built portfolio insurance for a reason. Don't let a red day hand it over to the people who caused it. And that's why I tell people to check out Noble Gold Investments. Go to nextnewsgold.com, you'll find it linked below, and see how you may qualify for a free 10th ounce American Gold Eagle while you protect what you have earned. Because if the financial class is preparing, hardworking Americans should be too. Now here's where the story gets even better for Trump supporters and even worse for the establishment. Democrats walked into that hearing hoping to paint Kevin Warsh as Trump's puppet. Instead, they exposed themselves as the ones terrified of losing control. Senator Dave McCormick said the hearing would show Trump made a great choice, and Senator Tim Scott made the bigger point. More Americans can live their vision of the American dream with a Fed chair focused on kitchen table economics, not left-wing ideology dressed up as monetary policy. Here's President Trump on Squawk Box today talking about Jerome Powell's Fed renovation.
We have to find out why a small building costs close to $4 billion. It's not finished, by the way. They have a long way to go. They ripped down the most beautiful ceilings. They'll never build them again. The most beautiful, thick, 1.5 foot thick walls of solid masonry. They're never going to be built again. They put up 6-inch sheetrock walls, and they say, so we have no insulation. It's not in the budget. I mean, these walls, they had the best. That building was so beautiful. I would have fixed that building. I would have had it brand new, beautiful for $25 million. And they're going to spend close to $4 billion, maybe more than that. I don't know. It's not finished. In fact, I looked at it the other day. I'm afraid Kevin will have to have an office next to me in the White House because that building's not going to be done. He's not going to be able to use that building for a long time. And, you know, he had a complaint. He said, I didn't realize this. He said the saddest thing is they ripped down the best building. He said there was a building that had beautiful boardrooms that he used many times when he was there, that beautiful boardrooms and meeting rooms. It was so beautiful. The nicest in Washington, and he said, they ripped it down. And maybe they did that to save money, like the Gavin Newsom, the railroad, where they made it shorter in order to save money, but it's still 25 times over budget. But the worst I've ever heard is the railroad in California, and I think this might be worse. Think of it. I would have fixed that building. Beautiful. Quickly. $25 million would have been like a brand new building. All the ceilings would have been left. All those beautiful thick walls with gorgeous moldings would have been left. You're going to get a sheetrock ceiling, a sheetrock wall without insulation. They said, sir, insulation's not in the budget. Insulation costs you $100 a room. The whole thing is crazy, and they're at $4. I think it's going to cost more than $4 billion when it's finished. But it would somehow we have to find out how this can happen. It's not the first time. How does this happen? Did the contractor make $3.5 billion?
Right.
If
the banking committee could take it over.
I can't imagine that Too Late is taking money on construction. I can't. But it's possible. But we have to find out, why is a job that should have cost $25 million costing billions and billions of dollars? I built the hotel. It's now the Waldorf. I sold it to Waldorf, and it's now the Waldorf. I built it for $201 million. It's a bigger building than the Federal, and it was hotel rooms with bathrooms and, partitions, and it's much more expensive to build a hotel room than it is a nice empty office space, right? And I built that for $201 million. This now is 8 years ago or so, but think of it. This building, you look at it, it's a little building. I think it's going to cost over $400 billion. And here's the thing. It's going to be nothing compared to what it was. They spent $4 billion, and it's nothing compared to what it was. It was beautiful. It had beautiful ceilings. They were all destroyed. They took them down. I don't know why.
If the DOJ, though, if this goes forward with Department of Justice and it delays him being confirmed, Kevin Warsh, it's kind of counterproductive for what you're trying to do in terms of changing the MO of the Fed up to this point. So I'm just trying to look for an off-ramp to get for you.
Well, it is and it isn't, Joe. You have to find out why a thing like that could happen, because if you have hundreds of projects like that, very few are like this, but if you had hundreds of projects like that, you have to find out why that happens. I mean, because we obviously don't do it right, but, we have some great people in government that can do jobs. I build under budget, ahead of schedule.
I've stayed at that Waldorf when it was the Trump Hotel in D.C. Such a beautiful building. The atrium, the bar, everything's so beautiful about it. Trump just put the Fed's waste machine on blast, hammering the renovation boondoggle and demanding answers. Now Tim Scott steps in to back Kevin Warsh, saying Trump picked a battle-tested reformer who can get Fed focused on working Americans again.
Well, I think the first thing we should talk about is how this is a good decision by President Trump to choose Kevin Warsh. Kevin Warsh is a guy who's battle-tested. He's ready for the job. And frankly, we are more likely to see more Americans experiencing their version of the American dream because Kevin Warsh will be chairing the Fed. It's time for the Fed to get back to independence. Under Jay Powell and Biden administration, we saw a lot of climate conversation and decisions that prioritize the climate. We want to prioritize every single kitchen table in America having a Fed chair that keeps them straight and direct in mind when they're having the conversation at the Fed. What we won't see from the Democrats today is a conversation about the American dream and why it's so important for us to talk about the balance sheet of the Fed, not the balance sheet of Kevin Warsh. They'll spend too much time talking about his balance sheet and not enough time talking about the Fed's balance sheet. They'll spend too much time talking about politics and not enough time talking about an interest rate environment that is conducive for home ownership, starting a small business, and making sure that the average person in this country has more money in the economy and less money parked on the sidelines.
Democrats would rather attack Warsh personally than talk about the Fed's failure. Now here's Dave McCormick making the case that Trump's pick is both experienced enough as an outsider to shake up the swampy status quo. Senator McCormick.
I think the hearing is going to go well. I really do. I think President Trump made a great choice. I think that's going to be clear to the members of the committee this morning. I think Kevin's got, extraordinary experience, but at the Fed, but also is an outsider, brings a reformer's heart to the job, and he's someone who understands financial markets. He's he's dealt with being an investor and sort of seen the unforgiving nature of markets for a long time.
Oh, and that hearing. How did it go? Trump's Fed chair nominee trolling Elizabeth Warren. Oh, this is beautiful.
In our meeting, you
Monetary
said
policy out
you
of
would
politics.
be independent because you're, quote, a tough guy. Those were your words, tough guy. And you will be able to stand up to President Trump. So let's try it again. Name one aspect of President Trump's economic agenda with which you disagree.
Well, Senator, the Federal Reserve in recent years has wandered outside of its remit, wandered into other
I'm
areas.
asking for something
That's
you
not something
disagree
I'm
with
prepared to
Donald
do.
Trump on.
If I'm
Just
confirmed,
one
the Federal
one
Reserve should stay in
economic
its
issue.
lane.
Just one little place where you disagree with Donald
Well, I
Trump.
do have a disagreement, actually, Senator, with the president. I think even this morning, he said that he thought I was out of central casting. I think central casting, I'd look older, grayer, and maybe show up here with a cigar of sorts.
Quite adorable. But you know, we need a Fed chair who is independent. That's the only way we preserve the independence
I agree.
of the Federal Reserve. If you can't answer these questions, you don't have the courage and you don't have the independence.
I agree
Thank
with you on
you, Mr.
independence, Senator.
Oh, my goodness. He refused to play the gotcha game. Managed to troll her in the process. Now here's Kennedy takes the Democrat talking point and mocks it out loud.
Professor, what's a sock puppet?
I heard the reference from Senator Warren.
Yeah, what
earlier.
is it?
I'm not sure I know. I think
Okay.
it's that thing you stick your hand in.
Yeah, kind of like this.
Yes.
What's a human sock puppet? Isn't a human sock puppet somebody who'll do what somebody else tells them to do?
I think that's what the senator was trying to suggest. I think that
gonna
was
be
the innuendo.
Are you going to be the president's human sock puppet?
Senator, absolutely not.
Are you going to be anybody's human sock puppet?
No, I'm honored the president nominated me for the position, and I'll be an independent actor if confirmed as chairman of the Federal Reserve.
My friend Senator Warren, and she is my friend, suggested that, I wrote it down, you will use your power, you might use your power to bail out your friends if they get in trouble, kind of like President Biden did with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. She didn't say the last part, I just did. Are you going to do that?
No, Senator.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
The ethics
He's
folks,
trying to hold back his laughter.
they've cleared you, but they've said you got to sell some assets. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And these assets that you have, you can't just hold a yard sale, can you?
No, not for most of them, sir.
Okay, so it takes a reasonable period of time, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've promised to sell them, right?
I did.
And if you don't sell them, we'll know, and the ethics folks will know, right?
Yes, I'd be in violation of the ethics agreement if I refuse to sell them.
But you're going to sell them, right?
Yes, Senator, I will.
Okay. Can we agree that politicians have the right to offer you advice about what to do with interest rates?
Senator, we can agree, and it's not something that I would shy away from. I've heard many senators from this very committee in years past express strong views on interest rates.
Okay.
Humble central bankers should be listening and then making their own decisions.
But some politicians matter more than others. And generally speaking, presidents matter, their opinion matters more than, say, a senator. President Trump has offered his opinion about what you ought to do with interest rates. Is that right?
Senator, he has not made his opinion on that a secret to anybody.
Yeah. And every president has that you're aware of.
Yes,
Hasn't it?
and they all tend to be in the same direction, Senator Kennedy.
Okay. Now, the problem is, can we agree that your credibility as Fed chairman is the most important thing you have?
It's the most important thing to me, it's the most important thing to the institution, and it's the most important thing to the successful conduct of policy.
Okay.
If the
That's
markets
that's
think
a
that-
yes, right?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. The problem is that President Trump has said he's not going to appoint anybody who wouldn't agree to lower interest rates. Have you agreed with the president that you're going to lower interest rates?
Senator, I'm glad you framed it that way. The president never asked me to predetermine, commit, fix, decide on any interest rate decision in any of our discussions, nor would I ever agree to do so.
So the
Kennedy cutting through the nonsense, forcing the key point. Warsh says Trump never demanded a preset rate cut. Joe Rogan Podcast News posting, does the President of the United States or current president ever call major bank CEOs and ask them to come in and give advice on what should be doing? Well, here is what the White House actually is, accessible and talking to business leaders.
Does the President of the United States, the current president, ever call major bank CEOs and ask them to come in and give advice about what he should be doing? Have you ever had that experience?
I would say, again, I think I'd broaden it to the administration, the White House, very, very accessible. And by the way, totally different than the last administration. Not to get political about it, but the last administration, no interest in engaging other than one or two people in that administration. It was almost like if you were business, you were by definition not good, and if you were bank, you were like the opposite, like just off the spectrum, not good. So this administration, listen, we don't agree with everything the administration is doing, and they don't like everything about us. But it's a very, very open conversation about policies, about regulation, about things that we see. And I think there's always this open door to conversation.
Open door. That's what President Trump has, an open door. After all the Democrat whining about independence, the CEO interview makes one thing clear. The White House listens, unlike the Biden crowd that treated nonsense. Now we're back to Warren trying another cheap shot.
And your courage. We'll start easy. Mr. Warsh, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
We try to keep politics, if I'm confirmed, out of the federal
I'm just
Reserve.
asking you a factual question. I need to know, I need to measure your independence and your courage.
Senator, I believe that this body certified that election many years ago.
That's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking, did Donald Trump lose in 2020?
I'm suggesting you in
I'm
2020, the
suggesting
Fed
you can't
made
answer
a
that.
huge inflation problem, and you certified the election.
So
You
let
need to
me
keep
ask you
politics
another
out of
question.
monetary policy.
In our
and
meeting,
monetary
you said
policy out
you
of
would
politics.
be independent.
Wow. Going back to 20, really, that's the litmus test, really? Unbelievable. But I expect nothing less from Pocahontas. You saw it. That was the moment that said everything. Warren, Pocahontas, pushing Warsh again and again, demanding he publicly break from President Trump just to prove his independence. Warsh refused to perform for the cameras, then landed the hit of the hearing with a joke about Trump calling him out of central casting, saying if he were true, he'd look older and grayer and show up with a cigar. Of course, the room shifted instantly. Democrats looked petty. Warsh looked composed. Senator Kennedy shredding the whole script, mocking the human sock puppet line, and forcing Warsh to state plainly that he would be nobody's puppet. See, that's the real story, not blind loyalty, but disciplined alignment with the America First mission to reform a bloated, insulated Fed that has operated too long without real scrutiny. And the final tell may be the biggest one of all. A major bank CEO admitting that the Trump administration and the White House are very, very accessible, adding that this is totally different from the former Biden administration, which treated business like the enemy. That means this White House is engaged, active, and serious about rebuilding economic strength with real-world input instead of elite isolation. President Trump is not just naming a Fed chair, he's dragging the central bank out from behind the curtain and forcing accountability where Washington never wanted it. If you believe the Fed should serve American workers, families, and savers instead of bureaucrats and political hobby horses, this is your fight too. So share this report, subscribe, and comment below. Yes or no, do you support President Trump's push to clean house at the Federal Reserve? And text raw feed to 844-840-4963 to beat the algorithm and get direct updates from me to your phone. And check out the Next News merch shelf below this video because America's back and the reset is underway.
The system controls information. Information control is power. I want you to see this. Truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.